When I returned to England, Winifred Sheffield had already been by Wilfred Conrad's side for nearly half a year. Outsiders said that Wilfred loved me so much he couldn't sleep. And during the years I was abroad for further studies, he found someone who looked very much like me to keep by his side. This was supposedly to avoid disturbing me and to ease his own lovesickness. I once asked Wilfred about Winifred's situation. He explained that Winifred had suddenly rushed in front of his car. The speed was too fast, and although Wilfred hit the brakes immediately, Winifred was still injured. They decided to settle the man-made car accident privately. Wilfred felt sorry for Winifred, and her face reminded him of me, so he gave her a full-time position. Wilfred's personal secretary. At the time, Wilfred's tone was teasing. Is Rowena jealous? Don't worry, with the original version by my side. How could I think of using that counterfeit? Besides, Rowena, you saved my life. I'll never forget that for as long as I live. But that's not. The one who saved Wilfred's life wasn't me. No matter how many times I tried to explain, Wilfred always said the same thing, I would never mistake that face. Though I wonder when you got that beauty mark near your eye. Perhaps I saw it wrong back then. Wilfred mused, stroking the mark near my eye. As time went on, I forgot to explain this matter, and I also forgot whether Wilfred loved my face or me as a person. Seeing my silence, Wilfred said seriously, Rowena Conrad, if it bothers you, I'll transfer her away when you return. No one can shake your position as Mrs. Conrad. As soon as my training was over, I rushed back to England without delay. Wilfred had promised to pick me up, but he wasn't there. Instead, one of his colleagues came. I asked about Wilfred's whereabouts, but his colleague hemmed and hawed, not knowing what to say. However, I soon learned the reason why Wilfred hadn't come to get me. Winifred Sheffield was ill, and Wilfred had accompanied her to the hospital for an injection. It was then that I realized Wilfred would be by someone's side when they were sick. But why didn't I know this? Wilfred and I were seen as star-crossed lovers in the eyes of others. A suitable match, childhood sweethearts, he handsome and I beautiful. From our school days, almost everyone assumed we would end up together. Wilfred and I thought so too. I can't remember exactly when I fell in love with Wilfred. Was it when he showed me special attention? Was it his aura as the all-rounder at school? Was it when everyone said we were a perfect match? Or was it when he saved my life as a child? 2 years ago, after my father died of a cerebral hemorrhage, only my mother and I were left in the Rowena family. For the sake of the family, for the company my father had worked hard for all his life, and for myself, the topic of marriage between Wilfred and me finally came up. We were both looking forward to the marriage immensely. Children from families like ours usually end up in arranged marriages, and we were no exception. However, our marriage was primarily for love, and secondarily for cooperation. When I arrived home alone, my mother had prepared a large table of my favorite dishes waiting for me. But looking at all those dishes I loved, I couldn't feel happy. In the early hours of the morning, Wilfred called to say he was waiting for me downstairs. Rowena hasn't seen me, so I've been waiting here for her. The autumn night was chilly, and seeing him still in light clothing, I was defeated by his childish words. I wanted to give him the cold shoulder, but when he pulled out a bag of still steaming roasted chestnuts from his coat, I couldn't help but smile. If Korean dramas have fried chicken and beer for winter dates, Wilfred and I have roasted chestnuts for autumn. This was the promise Wilfred made to me when I was obsessed with Korean dramas. Wilfred hadn't changed. He still remembered. He was still the Wilfred who loved me. I was so happy that I hugged him directly, but he didn't smell of the sweet aroma of chestnuts. There was only the chill of the autumn wind and the scent of hospital disinfectant. I froze for a moment, the blood in my body turning to ice. The embrace that once gave me the most warmth now felt painfully cold. I looked at him and asked glumly, Wilfred, why didn't you come to pick me up today? Winifred Sheffield was ill today. You know she has no family, so I had to accompany her to the hospital. He stroked my head, speaking frankly, his face full of satisfaction. Only, I didn't know if that smile was thinking of Rowena Conrad or Winifred Sheffield. His frank tone made my worries seem like unreasonable fuss. Rowena, the position of Mrs. Conrad is only yours. That evening's encounter ended in silence and disappointment. The words "I don't like Winifred Sheffield" were left hanging in the air as Wilfred Conrad departed. In the past, whenever Wilfred upset me, he would use those words to appease me, and it always worked like a charm. But that night, hearing those words brought me no joy. I wanted the position of Mrs. Conrad simply because Mr. Conrad was him. In the days following our unpleasant parting, Wilfred and I entered our first Cold War. It ended with my defeat. I missed Wilfred terribly, his favoritism, his care. Moreover, the Conrad family needed a man like Wilfred at its helm. I didn't want my mother to worry about my relationship, nor did I want my father's life's work to be ruined by my hands. I swallowed my pride and went to Wilfred's company. I used to visit Wilfred's company often before I went abroad. I confidently walked towards his office, only to be stunned by the receptionist's greeting. "Miss Sheffield, are you feeling better? Back to work so soon? Didn't Mr. Conrad come with you?" The receptionist's friendly colleague greeted me, but she was addressing someone else. It seemed Winifred Sheffield and I truly lived alike. Wilfred's office was empty. Just outside his door, a makeshift workstation had been hastily set up. It was covered with women's cosmetics and personal items, and the nameplate clearly displayed a name both familiar and foreign to me: Winifred Sheffield. I asked Wilfred's assistant about his current whereabouts, and as I suspected, he was at the hospital. I went to the hospital alone, without alerting anyone. The nurses there greeted me warmly, complimenting how nice I looked in a red dress. Only, they all addressed me as Miss Sheffield, not Rowena Conrad. Of course, the heiress of the Conrad family in Edinburgh would never visit a public hospital. Our family doctor always made house calls. It was the solitary Winifred Sheffield who would appear in a hospital. I wondered how the young master of the Conrad family had made this hospital his second home. I saw the couple embracing in the hospital room, watching television. Winifred was leaning against Wilfred, sipping a milkshake. The table was laden with snacks, and they were eating roasted chestnuts while watching a popular American drama. Wilfred was quietly holding Winifred, diligently peeling chestnuts for her as they watched the show together. This scene was exactly like Wilfred and me 3 years ago. I watched them for a long time. How similar Winifred and I were. They all said Wilfred had found my replacement, but now that I was back, why didn't he love me anymore? Who was really the substitute? "Wilfred, those roasted chestnuts you bought for me the other day weren't good at all." In the hospital room, Wilfred answered my call without hesitation in front of Winifred, casually feeding her a chestnut and watching her eat with delight. My random comment made Wilfred's relaxed expression suddenly tense up. Seeing this, Winifred quickly nodded and said the chestnuts were delicious, even feeding one to Wilfred. "Rowena, what are you on about now?" Wilfred in the hospital room was amused by Winifred, but his words to me were full of impatience. The conversation between Wilfred and me ended on a sour note once again. Ever since Winifred Sheffield appeared, Wilfred and I haven't had a proper conversation. Wilfred seemed to realize he had been neglecting me lately. That evening, he came to my house with a bag of roasted chestnuts, a thoughtful gesture. He had changed into fresh clothes, no longer smelling of hospital disinfectant. The chestnuts were soft, sweet, and fragrant. He came to apologize for neglecting me due to his busy work schedule. I gazed into his deep eyes, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology. "Wilfred, I don't like her. Rowena, I'm sure you'll like her once you get to know her. Wilfred, you've always known who I'm concerned about. You don't even need me to say her name, yet you still hurt me. You said you'd transfer her if I didn't like her. Winifred is an orphan. Wouldn't you be worried if I transferred her? Where should I send her, Rowena? When did you become so cold?" Wilfred hadn't touched the chestnuts since I mentioned not liking Winifred. "Wilfred, it's not my fault she's an orphan. I shouldn't have to bear the consequences of this situation. Transferring her would only mean moving her away from you. She wouldn't be in danger. Why should I worry? But Wilfred, I'm really bothered by her presence. Rowena, you're the only future Mrs. Conrad. Winifred has never thought about competing with you for anything." With those words, Wilfred turned and left. My mother, who was about to call us for dinner, froze in the kitchen doorway. I nonchalantly led my mother to the dining table, which was laden with dishes, most of them Wilfred's favorites. "Rowena. Mom, I know. Being Mrs. Conrad is enough. Nothing else matters. Rowena Conrad could live without Wilfred Conrad, but the Conrad family couldn't. After her father's death, relatives were eyeing the company greedily. They didn't approve of a woman in charge, and I truly lacked business acumen. Everything was held together by Wilfred's influence. Without Wilfred, her father's company would cease to exist. The first time she truly saw Winifred Sheffield was at the 50th birthday gala for Wilfred's father. Due to an unpleasant incident that day, Wilfred hadn't invited Rowena as his date. His date was Winifred Sheffield, rumored in their circles to be Rowena's replacement. Rowena attended as a representative of the Conrad family. The Conrads and Wilfred's family were close friends, so her presence at such an occasion was expected. Dressed in a red gown, she quietly observed Wilfred in the crowd, his arm around Winifred in her white dress, patiently introducing her as Winifred Sheffield to others. News of the young Miss Conrad's return to Britain had spread. Everyone naturally assumed the woman by Wilfred's side was Rowena Conrad, commenting on how well-matched Mr. Conrad and Miss Conrad were. Some even made snide remarks to Winifred, saying now that Miss Conrad was back, her copycat replacement should bow out. But upon hearing Wilfred's introduction, their faces fell, and upon seeing Rowena, they avoided her entirely. After all, in this grand spectacle, the original had lost to the copy. Winifred, however, didn't give them the chance to enjoy the drama. They met at the bar in a corner. This spot was perfect for a private conversation, dimly lit, unnoticed by others, yet within everyone's sight. One shout would draw all eyes to them. "Sister, you're quite clever, aren't you? Using my life-saving deed to make Wilfred marry you?" Rowena was startled, looking at her face as memories flooded back. As a child, Wilfred had been the golden boy, nearly flawless except for his foul temper. The boys in class resented him and once ambushed him on his way home alone, beating him unconscious. In his days, Wilfred said Rowena had appeared and called an ambulance, saving his life. Indeed, she should have realized sooner. Wilfred had mistaken her for his savior based on her face alone. But Rowena was certain she hadn't saved him. It must have been Winifred Sheffield, who looked like her, most importantly lacking the tear-shaped mole by her eye. But don't worry, sister. Unlike you, even without this life-saving grace, Wilfred would still choose me. Don't you believe that? Seeing Rowena's silence and lack of anger, Winifred raised her hand and slapped herself, then poured her red wine over her own head, smashing the glass at her feet. The moment the glass shattered, the lights brightened, and all eyes turned to them. "Sister Rowena, I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken your place. I'll leave, I'll stay far away from Mr. Conrad." Winifred's face bore a clear handprint, her perfect makeup ruined by wine, her white dress in disarray. Alerted by the commotion, Wilfred rushed over, quickly removing his jacket to wrap around Winifred. He looked at Rowena with displeasure. "Rowena Conrad, I asked Winifred to stay by my side. If you have any complaints, direct them at me. Wilfred, so you do know I'm unhappy, yet you still defend her like this." Rowena didn't wish to engage further. Before her marriage to Wilfred, they couldn't afford to make a scene publicly. But some people always push their luck. "Wilfred, I should still leave. You've done nothing wrong, why should you leave?" "Rowena, you should apologize to Winifred." Wilfred came to his senses, holding on to Winifred as she tried to leave. Rowena stopped in her tracks, watching Wilfred embrace another woman. Wilfred was always like this, giving 100% of his affection to those he cared about. Before Winifred appeared, whenever Rowena was wronged or bullied, regardless of who was at fault, Wilfred would always take her hand and encourage her to fight back. Now, that favoritism was directed at someone else, and Rowena had become the one being bullied. "Do you want me to go through the same ordeal she did?" Rowena looked at Wilfred silently, waiting for him to speak. He was that kind of person. In his view, the best way to torment someone was to make them experience the same suffering. Wilfred remained silent, but Winifred beside him broke into a smile. "I won't hit you, sister." As she spoke, a glass of red wine flew towards Rowena, too quick for anyone to react. Rowena had no time to dodge, expecting to be drenched in red wine, when suddenly, voices erupted around her. "Sister, choose me instead. I'm the one truly suited for you." The red wine spilled all over the man in front of me. He looked at me with a gentle smile, as if nothing had happened, but his words were incomprehensible. Rowena Conrad, what's your relationship with him? Instead of the concern I had imagined from Wilfred Conrad, what came was his accusation without rhyme or reason. What about your relationship with the lady beside you? And what exactly is our relationship? Wilfred's face turned from pale to dark. For the first time, he looked at me, stammering, not knowing what to say. Wilfred, before you try to control others, control yourself first. I ignored him and left with the man in front of me. I still owed him a thank you. The man's name was Alexander Sinclair, the eldest grandson of the century-old Sinclair family in Edinburgh. In terms of status, he was probably someone no one in Edinburgh dared to offend. I didn't remember knowing Alexander Sinclair, but his appearance did give me a sense of familiarity. In my memory, there was also a little boy who used to follow me around calling me sister. Alexander was very polite, and our conversation was pleasant. Except for his puzzling words when we parted. Sister, whether it's what you want or what Wilfred can give you, I can give you all of it. When I went to sleep that night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was in a novel. Wilfred was the male lead, Winifred Sheffield was the female protagonist, and I was the female lead substitute. Due to a momentary system failure, Winifred disappeared after saving young Wilfred. When Winifred re-entered the world of the book, it was just before I returned to the UK. Winifred's strategy was very successful. Wilfred quickly fell for her but left because he couldn't accept my existence. After marrying me, when Wilfred found out that the person who saved him was Winifred, he grabbed my neck and said, "Don't you love being her substitute? Then be a good one for me. You drove her away. Since that's the case, you should become her." I suddenly woke up from the dream, and the following scenes vanished instantly. But I guess that for a supporting character who obstructed the main couple, a peaceful death would probably be the best outcome. The scenes in the dream felt too real to be just a dream. The pain at the corner of my eye seemed as if it had really happened. My hand unconsciously touched the position of the mole near my eye, and the smooth skin told me that everything now was not a dream. The timeline in the dream completely matched what was happening now, which made me pay attention. According to the dream scenario, next would be the uncle seeing that Wilfred no longer favored me and trying to force me to step down at the annual meeting. Winifred had also been crying about wanting to leave. For the sake of the Conrad family, I had intercepted the news of Winifred's departure and kept Wilfred. Wilfred's appearance at the annual meeting dispelled the uncle's intentions but truly hurt Winifred, causing her to leave. Wilfred married me out of revenge, and all the tragedies began from there. Sure enough, the timeline matched perfectly. This time, I didn't intercept the news of Winifred wanting to leave. Wilfred, who had promised to come to the annual meeting, rushed to the airport upon hearing that Winifred was there, regardless of anything else. "Wilfred, I'm asking you one last time, are you really not coming? Rowena, I have something urgent here. I really can't get away. I will announce the cancellation of the wedding. Rowena Conrad, don't regret it." I hung up the phone and looked at the uncles downstairs with their various intentions. I felt that today's battle would be truly difficult to fight. But what could I do? Father was gone, and no one would treat me like a princess anymore. "Sister, why do you never wait for me?" The Alexander Sinclair in front of me was completely different from the little boy who used to follow me around. Back then, he was a chubby little fellow who loved to cry. Alexander was kidnapped as a child, and after barely escaping, he ended up on the streets. Later, I brought him back to the Conrad family, and he followed me around calling me sister all day. Later, he was found by his relatives, and we never met again. At that time, my parents only said that he was taken back by his family but didn't mention that he was a descendant of the Sinclair family. After showing his face to me that day, Alexander came to find me several times. Seeing that I kept refusing to meet him, he finally told me everything about the past. "When I came to find you back then, you went to find Wilfred. When I became an adult and could date, you were with Wilfred. When I reached the legal age to marry, you got engaged to Wilfred. Sister, why couldn't you just wait for me? Alexander Sinclair. Call me Alex. Alex, a childhood crush isn't necessarily true love. It wasn't just a childhood crush. I still have feelings for you now. Sister, choose me. I was wrong. Crispin Ramsay is still the same Crispin Ramsay as before. He loves to follow me around, and if things don't go his way, he's ready to cry at the drop of a hat. After that dream, I became determined to break off my engagement with Wilfred Conrad. Wilfred doesn't truly love me, and marrying him would only be to protect the Sheffield family. Since he can't even manage that, ending the engagement seems like the best solution. Rowena, are you sure you want to get engaged to me? Crispin asked. Not engaged, married, he corrected himself. Crispin removed the ring Wilfred had placed on my middle finger and replaced it with his own. He then handed me another ring, looking at me meaningfully. What will we wear when we get engaged if we're wearing these now? These are the ones I prepared for you before. I'll get new ones for our engagement. Crispin held my hand, the two rings glinting side by side. Crispin, shouldn't you tell your family about this? Darling, do you know how many times I've been scolded by my parents over this? They keep saying I'm useless, that I let someone else snatch away the bride I had my eye on. As he said this, Crispin's smiling face suddenly crumpled as he leaned on my shoulder, pretending to cry. It was quite a comical sight, this tall lad of over 6 feet bending down to rest his head on my shoulder. Are you a little crybaby, Crispin? I'm your little crybaby, darling. The news of my broken engagement with Wilfred Conrad spread like wildfire. After all, no one could have imagined that I, a mere orphan, would give up such a great catch as Wilfred Conrad. The cancellation of the engagement delighted my uncles and aunts, but before they could celebrate for long, they were caught off guard by the news of my engagement to Crispin Ramsay. Compared to the Conrad family, the Ramsays were an even bigger fish. When my mother learned of Crispin Ramsay's true identity, she repeatedly praised my decision. In fact, it wasn't Wilfred that my parents had initially set their sights on, but the little chap who had always followed me around and only listened to me, Crispin. Wilfred was indeed outstanding, but his family situation was complicated, especially his father, who had many illegitimate children. Crispin, on the other hand, was an orphan without a complex family background. My family didn't lack money, so as long as he could treat me well for a lifetime, that was enough. It was only later when my father discovered Crispin's true identity, coupled with my mutual affection for Wilfred, that he had no choice but to entrust me to him. Now, things have unknowingly returned to their proper course, and my mother couldn't be happier. People in our social circle all said I was lucky, losing one Wilfred Conrad only to gain an even better Crispin Ramsay. Everyone around me was congratulating me, especially since Wilfred had already made other choices. Everyone thought we were perfect together, except for Wilfred. That day, Wilfred went to the airport to stop Winifred Sheffield from leaving. He thought I was joking about canceling the engagement, that it was just to force him to come back, and even if it was really cancelled, I would eventually come crawling back to him for forgiveness. After all, I had no one else to rely on now. But Crispin Ramsay appeared, and his appearance shattered all of Wilfred's calculations. Wilfred once brought Winifred to see me. That day, Crispin was at home keeping me company. I used to think roasted chestnuts were the perfect winter treat. But Crispin showed me that jacket potatoes were just as perfect for cold days. Especially the jacket potatoes Crispin made, they were so fragrant and sweet, warming you to the core. When Wilfred found me, he saw me feeding Crispin a jacket potato. There were several potatoes, but Crispin insisted on eating the one from my hand. Rowena Conrad, you told me to mind my status, but have you ever minded yours? Wilfred said. Isn't that a bit hypocritical, Mr. Conrad? Besides, you and I are no longer connected, I replied. I raised my hand, showing that the ring on it had been replaced with Crispin's. Wilfred, remembering that I had already announced the end of our engagement, quickly pulled Winifred forward. Rowena, that's not what I meant. Winifred is just my sister, there's nothing between us. She's here today to apologize to you. Winifred looked at me stubbornly, unable to open her mouth. Mr. Conrad, I don't sell regrets here, I said firmly. Rowena Conrad, don't you care about being Mrs. Conrad anymore? Don't you care if I marry Winifred? Wilfred challenged. What makes Mr. Conrad think that the position of Mrs. Conrad would be better than that of Mrs. Ramsay? Crispin, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up, his presence intimidating Wilfred. Crispin Ramsay, does your family really approve of the Beechams in their current state? Wilfred lashed out, perhaps revealing his true thoughts. The Beechams may not be equal to the Ramseys, but Rowena means more to me than 1,000 Ramsey families. Crispin replied. As for your question about approval, I'm marrying a wife, not forming an alliance. The Ramseys don't care about such things. From the moment I met her, she was already above me. Together, the Beechams will be on equal footing with the Ramseys. The hurt and anger I felt from Wilfred's words were instantly dispelled by Crispin's speech. It was something I had never expected. Even I hadn't considered that after my father's death, lacking a head for business, it would be difficult for me to preserve the Beecham family. Choosing Wilfred was more about ensuring the Beechams wouldn't be swallowed up while I was still around. But it would never be possible to be on equal footing with the Conrads again. Yet Crispin said it was possible. Even if these words were just to save face in front of Wilfred, it was enough for me. Rowena, Crispin, dinner's ready, my mother's voice timely interrupted the tense atmosphere in the living room. Wilfred, I've only prepared dinner for the family, so I won't be able to accommodate you and this young lady, my mother said, also standing up for me. In the past, whenever Wilfred came to our house, she would call him Will and prepare a table full of his favorite dishes, all in hopes that he would treat me better. Today, my mother had directly asked them to leave. Mrs. Beecham, Mom, let's eat. Coming. Wilfred and Crispin's voices rang out simultaneously. I glanced at Crispin. This boy was particularly good at pushing boundaries. Not long ago, he was still calling her Mrs. Beecham, and now he was directly calling her Mom. I'm just helping Mom get used to her son-in-law calling her that, Crispin joked as he peeled a prawn for me. Since being with Crispin, the dishes at home were always my favorites. I love spicy food. In the past, when I was with Wilfred, he preferred mild flavors. To make him treat me better, my mom would prepare a table full of his favorite dishes whenever he was at our house. He enjoyed the food, but I didn't. Now that I'm with Crispin, the table is often filled with spicy dishes. Crispin used to not eat spicy food either. I remember the first time he ate at my house, he cried from the spiciness. Later, even when mild dishes were specially prepared for him, he wouldn't touch them, insisting on eating spicy food with me. Now he can handle spicy food even better than I can. I once asked him how he became so good at eating spicy food. When I was young, I wanted to be with you forever, and I was afraid you'd leave me behind if I couldn't eat spicy food. Later, when I wanted to be part of your life, I kept up the habit of eating spicy food, he explained. Now, I can't live without spicy food, he added with a smile. After Wilfred Conrad's failed attempt at my house that day, it wasn't long before he started boasting about marrying Winifred Sheffield. Unfortunately, Mr. Barnaby Conrad consistently refused to approve even when Wilfred knelt at the family's doorstep for 3 days. I had known all along that Mr. Conrad would never agree to this marriage. When he initially approved my marriage to Wilfred, it was largely because he saw the potential in the unsupported Beecham family behind me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have turned a blind eye when Wilfred humiliated me at his birthday celebration. This man valued benefits more than Wilfred did. Wilfred, unable to swallow his pride after being rejected, decided to hold a wedding ceremony with Winifred anyway. Mr. Conrad promptly brought his illegitimate son home and announced his intention to change the heir. This news forced Wilfred to personally cancel the wedding. Winifred threw many tantrums, but compared to marriage, Wilfred always knew what held more weight for him. When Crispin Ramsey and I got engaged, he was like a peacock displaying its feathers, announcing it everywhere. He even sent a separate invitation to Wilfred specifically, not to the Conrad family, but to Wilfred alone. I pinched his face, laughing at his cautious eyes. He's the best witness to the happy moments between me and my darling, I said. At the engagement party, Crispin's eyes reddened again. In private, Crispin often cried, but only in front of me. I didn't expect him to get teary-eyed in front of so many people today. Sister, I've dreamed of this moment for countless days and nights. I thought I'd never have the chance, he said. Every time I chose Wilfred, Crispin was secretly imagining it was him and me, silently wishing for my happiness. Now that his fantasy had come true, it felt unreal to him. However, when he saw my tears, what he said while burying his face in my neck was true. Because in his fantasies, I never cried, I was never sad. I was always smiling, always happy. Halfway through the engagement party, Wilfred Conrad appeared before me. He reached out his hand, gazing at me with deep affection, and said, "Rowena, I've come to take you away." Wilfred, get a grip. I'm Rowena Conrad, not Winifred Sheffield. I'm perfectly lucid, Rowena. Winifred and I are over. Come back to me. Crispin Ramsay watched Wilfred's passionate declaration, his forehead furrowed with deep concern. Crispin Ramsay, who do you think you are? Rowena and I are destined to be together. She saved my life, and I saved hers. You have nothing, you can't compare to me. Seeing Crispin standing protectively in front of me, Wilfred suddenly burst into an angry tirade. The person who saved you was never me. It was Winifred. You've got it wrong. Wilfred, it's me. I'm the one who saved you back then, Winifred cried, clinging to the frenzied Wilfred and recounting how she had rescued him years ago. That's impossible. The person who saved me had a beauty mark at the corner of her eye. You don't have one. Wilfred gripped Winifred's face tightly, examining it from every angle, insisting that the person who saved him had a beauty mark, all the while raving about taking me away. Witnessing Wilfred's madness, Winifred publicly announced that she was pregnant with his child. To prevent the situation from escalating further, Mr. Barnaby Conrad decided to leave immediately with Wilfred and Winifred. Mr. Conrad was extremely reluctant to acknowledge Winifred's status. After all, apart from having a face similar to mine, she had none of my family background or connections. However, with her public revelation of carrying Wilfred's child, and everyone aware of how Wilfred had trampled on my reputation as his fiancé for this look-alike, Mr. Conrad had no choice but to take Winifred along. Darling, I'm so sorry. I just wanted him to see how happy we are together. I never imagined things would turn out like this, Crispin said, hanging his head in shame, unable to meet my eyes. No one could have anticipated Wilfred's breakdown, not even Mr. Conrad. Otherwise, he certainly wouldn't have allowed him to come. It's all right, love. As long as our happiness belongs to us, that's all that matters. As long as Rowena Conrad has Crispin Ramsay by her side, she will undoubtedly be happy. Crispin Ramsay had thought that Wilfred Conrad's appearance at the engagement party would surely steal the show, but in the end, all the attention was focused on him, the proud peacock who had won the heart of his beautiful bride. On the day of the engagement party, trending alongside the event was news of Crispin Ramsay's donation to the Conrad Foundation. The Conrad Foundation was a charitable organization for underprivileged orphans that Crispin had established when he was 10 years old. With its headquarters in the University of Edinburgh, it had been operating for 15 years, helping orphans find homes and raising thousands of children. I was 9 when I met Crispin, who was 8 at the time. This year, I'm 26, and he's 25. Today marks the 15th anniversary of the Conrad Foundation, as well as the 17th year since Crispin and I first met. Crispin's 17-year secret love had finally blossomed, and now the whole world knew that Crispin Ramsay loved Rowena Conrad. When Crispin and I got married, he was reluctant to send invitations to the Conrad family, especially Wilfred Conrad, fearing he might cause a scene at the wedding reception. At the wedding, when the bridesmaids saw the Conrad family, they were still gossiping about how Wilfred had made such a fuss at my engagement party, wondering how he dared to attend the wedding. Seeing my nonchalant wave and carefree attitude, they felt emboldened to continue sharing the latest gossip about Wilfred Conrad with me. I had seen in the news that the Conrad family had changed their heir. At the time, Winifred Sheffield's pregnancy was common knowledge, as was Wilfred Conrad's days of kneeling before his family to marry her. The only way to resolve the situation was for Wilfred to marry Winifred. However, marrying a wife without a prestigious background meant that Wilfred would no longer be the perfect heir in Mr. Barnaby Conrad's eyes. Wilfred subsequently left Conrad Industries. Not long ago, Wilfred and Winifred had an incident at the police station. Winifred had called the police, accusing Wilfred of domestic violence and seeking a divorce. After Wilfred and Winifred's marriage, he had always believed that Winifred's presence was the reason I left him. He also refused to believe that Winifred was the one who had initially saved him, thinking she was impersonating me. Once, when Wilfred was drunk, he tried to use a cigarette to create a beauty mark on Winifred's face, saying it would make her look more like me. He also frequently forced her to wear red dresses. Winifred couldn't take it anymore, so she called the police and filed for divorce. As I heard all this, my body began to tremble. Everything Winifred had experienced was identical to what I had gone through in my dreams, only the victim had changed from me to her. I had that dream again, and this time I witnessed everything. After Wilfred Conrad married me, I endured his pain by his side day after day. 3 months later, Winifred Sheffield returned. She wore a victorious smile, looking at me, who was no longer recognizable as Rowena Conrad. I had become a second Winifred Sheffield. The beauty mark at the corner of my eye was gone. I often wore white dresses, and even my name had become Winnie. I was no longer Rowena Conrad. In the second week after Winifred Sheffield's return, I died. I bled to death after being pushed down the stairs by Winifred Sheffield. My mother, unable to bear this blow, lost her mind and caused a car accident on the road. The Beecham family was completely swallowed up by Wilfred Conrad. Less than a week after my death, Wilfred Conrad married Winifred Sheffield. Crispin Ramsay had secretly looked at me once on my wedding day. After seeing me married, he went abroad alone. The next news he received about me was 3 months later, at my funeral. When he heard of my death, he cried until his eyes were red. He came back to avenge me but became the terrifying villain of the story due to Wilfred Conrad and Winifred Sheffield's protagonist aura. In the end, he jumped to his death, and the century-old Ramsay family was unable to survive. The Conrad family took the place of the Ramsay family in one leap. The protagonists of the story defeated the villain and celebrated a happy ending that satisfied everyone. But what wrong did Crispin Ramsay and I do? At the end of the story, I returned to the time when I was saved as a child. It turned out everything was just a scheme. After Crispin Ramsay went home, I was unhappy and listless for days on end. At that time, Wilfred Conrad was just an unfavored son. Although he was the rightful young Master Conrad, he and his mother were not liked by Mr. Conrad. Mrs. Conrad then came up with a plan. She deliberately let me fall into the water so that Wilfred Conrad could save me, bringing me closer to him and replacing Crispin Ramsay in my heart. After Wilfred Conrad saved me, my parents often invited him to our house to play as a way of thanking him. It was also at that time that Mr. Conrad chose Wilfred Conrad as his heir to groom. It turned out that the life-saving grace I had always remembered was nothing more than his calculated scheme. "Rowena, darling, wake up. Rowena." As I was crying with snot running everywhere, Crispin Ramsay's voice came through. Only then did I realize it was all a dream. Yes, it was a dream. Wilfred Conrad and I had long since parted ways. I stared blankly at the person in front of me, with his sharp brows and starry eyes, handsome. Had a nightmare? Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Your husband is here now, I'm here, don't be scared. This man, who used to call me Miss before we were married, not only stopped calling me that after the wedding but also always wanted me to call him darling. A younger man not calling you Miss, his thoughts are a bit wild.